Hi, it's KatieSerianibowell, and I'm back with Katie Stories number 8. And yeah, I took a little bit of a vacation. Sorry I didn't see you last weekend. I filmed it. I was a little bit late, and I filmed it. And you know what? I watched it, and I started falling asleep. Just my energy didn't meet my eyes. Just everything I was saying, I didn't feel I was doing it in my best Katie self. So I just scrapped it and thought, no, I'll just wait. And you know what's funny? I woke up in the middle of the night with a sore throat and I was sick. So I stayed home Wednesday from work and just took care of myself. Did the old echinacea, oil of oregano, and other concoctions, and kind of dragged myself through the rest of the week. And I'm just starting to feel good again. And look at this weather. Like, it's October 5th today? Wow. It's like early September, late August. It's gorgeous. Yeah, and I already packed up all my summer stuff, so I had to wear my sweater with the big holes in it so I can breathe. Okay, I'm going to get started. This is going to be a great Katie story. I left off last week, and I was talking about, I was kind of getting towards grade 8, so I want to back up a bit, okay? When I did this compilation story, my story is 11 pages. It's like a trailer of my life. So, of course, there was lots of good little tidbits that I had to leave out. So all of the stories could fit beautifully. So that is why I'm working on the full story. And I have some excerpts, which I printed. I gave these as gifts at the Global Summit. A big website where all 30 authors were introduced, and people could learn more about us and our stories. So my gift was some extra goodies that I would love to not have had to cut, but that's just the way it was. So one of my favorite school years was grade 6 with Miss Sodden. I hung out with a great group of friends and pulled off some B's on my report card. Miss Sodden was younger than most teachers, with a gorgeous 70s Farrah Fawcett hairstyle. Yeah, I like that kind of thing, eh? And she wore brown corduroy flare legs and treated us with patience and kindness, but never took any crap. This made her cool in our books. Something she did for me was the coolest, though. During this time, in grade 6, my dad Frank was 57 and at the height of his gambling addiction, which almost cost us our home the following year, and I talked about that in Katie Stories 7. My oldest brother Danny was out of his mind from drugs and schizophrenia. I talked about that too. My other brother Fred was 14 and had dropped out of school and was getting into typical teenage boy shit like vandalism, B&Es, and partying with his tough and troubled friends from our hood. Many of those friends stayed with us, whether a week, a night, or months. My sister Debbie, who dropped out of school a few years earlier to help take care of us when Mum wasn't mentally functioning well, was now hanging out with a rough crowd, and she was drinking heavy. Mum was coping quite well at this point, but she'd still barely leave the house. She'd been reclusive since I was 4, starting off in the 70s. So other than, in the car, a trip to another town 45 minutes away or an hour away, she wouldn't go out. She wouldn't leave the house. Dad was stressed out. Dad was angry. Dad was completely fucking exhausted, and he needed a quadruple bypass now. I headed to school aware that the doctors had given him a 50-50 chance of surviving the surgery that day. I remember leaving a very somber house that morning. My mum must have called the school because Miss Sodden did something you would never see done in a school today. As we filed into class and sat down, she told my classmates about my dad's surgery and the frightening odds of him getting through it. She asked everyone to bow their heads and pray. I could feel the energy throughout the room. I get goosebumps when I tell this story. I still do. Miss Sodden came to visit me recently to pick up a book, and it was wonderful to see her again and thank her in person. And of course, we talked about that. And it was interesting. Shortly after our class with her, she was married and had kids. And so she said, I remember the times with you and your friends so clearly. And everything after that was a blur because she had her own children. And so I'm really grateful to reconnect again and thank someone again from the past who had such a great influence on my life and just gave me their love. Being the youngest in my family, with my brother Fred and his troubled and tough friends 2 grades ahead of me, certainly came with some perks. Not just that most of his friends were cute and always hanging around playing great music in the house at full volume. They were cool and they ruled the school. untouchable status and mafia protection for me. Not from my brother, but from his closest, toughest, and most trouble friend of them all, Mike. My self-appointed bodyguard. My parents treated Mike like their own. He was the second youngest of 6 and lived beside the school. Mike was a hot-looking boy. He was Aboriginal, and he often showed up at our house with a torn t-shirt, faded jean jacket, torn jeans, and battered old Daytons. Kick-ass boots. Remember the Daytons? He also sported a black eye, fat lip, chipped tooth, and his arm in a sling, inflicted by his stepdad or his big brothers. Mike was always sweet with me and very protective when I ran into bullies, even if I'd brought it on by shooting off my cheeky mouth. When I was in grade 5, walking home from school, my friend and I were teasing another girl in a grade younger by singing a silly song with her name in it. Ruth, dee Ruth, a la da da da. This boy named Chris, also a grade lower than us, was nearby. I gather he knew her and he was her bodyguard because he ran up and kicked me hard in the hoo-hoo. I hobbled home bawling my eyes out and hyperventilating. Mike was at the house and grilled me for the details. The next day he had me point the boy out in front of everyone in the big lineup coming in from recess. He picked him up by his armpits in front of the crowd, suspended him against the door, and told him to apologize and never boot a girl in the private area again. The boy started to cry and said, "I'm sorry." And Mike yelled, "Don't apologize to me, apologize to Katie." Mike released him before the teachers arrived to let us in, and Chris stayed clear of me. The best story of Mike having my back takes place 2 years later when I was in grade 7 and involves me and my crush Kenny, ice cream, and a paper route. But I'm going to save that maybe for next week because I'm going to finish off so I can squeeze Mark in. Sadly, when Mike left the island for Vancouver, he was in and out of the drug scene and dealing. In '94, he commits suicide. Mike was a really great person with a big heart, but he just wasn't able to fly straight the way my brother and most of his friends ended up doing by age 16 and 17. Rest in peace, Mike. Thank you for being one of my angels then and now. You know what? I don't think we are going to get to Marky Mark. I think I'm going to save that for next week. And tell you a bit about Mike. He was really cool. And when he was 15, he moved to Vancouver. And he came to visit now and then. But my parents, one time when he was staying with us, my brother had this funny feeling about him because he was getting into drugs. Mike was. And he had to go to work, and my parents were at home. By now, my mom was leaving the house. I'm flash forwarding a bit for you, okay? So Mike was about 15, and Freddie called another friend, Phil, and said, "Can you go up to my parents' house? I just have this funny feeling about Mike. He's just been stealing a lot and stuff. I don't want him to take anything of my parents." And so Phil went up there, and Mike was already up and out of the shower, so they went to go shoot some pool. And later that evening, my parents did have a funny feeling someone was in their room, and he had stolen my dad's war medals. Yeah, World War II. My dad had the Star of Italy. I know he received some kind of medal in Germany and in France. Maybe it was England. So Mike was banned from our house. My parents were really hurt. And through the years, my brother Fred still kept in touch with him. They had the same music in common, and they'd party. And I saw Mike a few times when I was in Vancouver. He had me over for a big turkey dinner. And he was either, dealing drugs and living, in a tiny little rotten breakdown house, or he'd be in a penthouse in a beautiful suite. It just depended where he was at in his life. But he was always a good guy. He just had this great charisma and energy. But he just couldn't, just get with the mainstream, right? So in '94, he phoned to wish my brother Fred a happy birthday. And my mom answered the phone, and something deep inside of her just said, "Let it go, it's been years." And she said, "Mike, how are you doing?" And he said, "Great, Mrs. S." Call her Mrs. S. "I've got a Harley, I'm really happy. I got this great girlfriend. I'm doing great, Mrs. S." And she said, "You know what, Mike? If you're back on the island sometime, you come by and see us. We want to have you for dinner." And he said, "That would be great." And Mike commits suicide about a week later. And my mom was just always so grateful that she had that conversation with him. And yeah, we still think about him, and we don't have any pictures of him. So I really hope one day that we can get hold of his brother, or if his mom is still alive. I don't know. I mean, he would be my brother's age, right? Like 56 now. So anyway, forgive, right? Let stuff go. Just have good boundaries, but it's so good to let stuff go, right? We cut that karmic cord. There's a negative energy, and just cut it and just love. I gotta go now. So we're gonna talk about Marky Mark next week, okay? Good story. Yeah, Marky Mark, the original. Bye.